Robby, what's on your radar?
Well, earlier this week, Facebook confirmed that it would no longer prevent users from praising Kyle Rittenhouse or seeking out praise on the platform, following the teen's acquittal of murder last month. A spokesperson said, quote, "While we will still remove content that celebrates the death of those individuals in Kenosha, we will no longer remove content containing praise or support of Rittenhouse." From August 2020 until the outcome of the trial, searches for Kyle Rittenhouse on the site had yielded blank pages. Facebook had initially designated Rittenhouse a mass murderer, and its policy is to immediately take down the profiles and pages of killers because it doesn't want to encourage copycats or reward the killers in the event that they were motivated by seeking notoriety. So that policy is understandable, though it was clearly applied wrongly in this case. If Facebook truly values free and open debate on topics of public importance, and it says that it does, then it should not have taken those actions. But at least Facebook now recognizes that it's acceptable to believe Rittenhouse was innocent. That's a concession that many public universities that ought to exercise some neutrality in their official statements declined to make. As I pointed out in my radar earlier this week, numerous institutions of higher learning had released statements condemning the acquittal and smearing anyone who agreed with it as a racist. Administrators at UC Irvine, Santa Cruz, and the New School are not the only ones who feel that way, however. At Arizona State University, a group of far-left students held a protest yesterday to demand the university expel Kyle Rittenhouse, even though, and get this, he isn't actually a student there. The students who organized the protest are explicitly socialist. They're part of the campus's socialist club. This is a bit ironic since many, if not all, socialists believe that education is a universal human right. Not for Kyle, I suppose. Their statement labeled him a racist murderer and called on the university to eject him if he ever sets foot on campus or enrolls. If video footage of the event on social media is any indication, it seemed sparsely attended. In fact, pro-Rittenhouse counter-demonstrators appeared to outnumber the socialists. When a leader of the protest, who was equipped with a megaphone, denounced Rittenhouse as a white supremacist killer, spectators pointed out that all three of the people he shot were white. This did not deter the protester, who responded that Rittenhouse was a descendant of white colonists who had murdered black and brown and indigenous people, indigenous Americans. In any event, there is little chance of Rittenhouse setting foot at ASU. He is not currently enrolled as a student. He was at one point signed up to take online classes while awaiting admission, but ASU said in a statement that that arrangement was not currently in effect. If he did express interest in ASU, the public university would have no reason to evict him, and it should consider his hypothetical application as if he were any other student. He is a free man who was deemed innocent by a jury of his peers, a jury that agreed he acted in self-defense when he shot three men after each had allegedly attacked him. He's neither a murderer nor does he appear to be a racist. He's publicly declared that he supports Black Lives Matter and lamented that prosecutors can use their power to mistreat defendants of color.
I'm not a racist person. I support the BLM movement. I support peacefully demonstrating. And I believe there needs to be change. I believe there's a lot of prosecutorial misconduct, not just in my case, but in other cases. And it's just amazing to see how much a prosecutor can take advantage of somebody. Like, if they did this to me, imagine what they could have done to a person of color who doesn't maybe have the resources I do or is not widely publicized like my case.
Leftist students have free speech rights, and they can exercise those to protest Rittenhouse if they want to. But a great many university administrators whose formal stance on public policy matters unrelated to education would be better left unsaid have also taken sides against Rittenhouse, as I reported in my radar earlier this week. ASU's administration, to its credit, did not join in those denunciations. A spokesperson confirmed to the media that Rittenhouse wasn't actually enrolled, but said nothing about keeping him off campus, to the disappointment of the socialists, apparently. Some conservative and libertarian students, on the other hand, said they would welcome Rittenhouse. The student organization Young Americans for Liberty released a statement chiding the left for hypocrisy. Sean Themia, Yale's chief of staff, said, quote, "How ironic that the same socialists who call higher education a human right also want to deny Rittenhouse that fundamental human right." He continued, "These radical regressives aren't interested in justice. They're interested in leveraging a national news story to get the university to fund their safe space." That was kind of funny. Leftist students, and then they said he's a white supremacist, and people are like, well, no, he's not, or you don't have any evidence of that. It's not race was not directly in play in this case. Obviously, it was a protest about racial issues, and then they said, well, but he's descendant of white colonizers, so we're all white supremacists.
Right, and that's become a rhetorical move that's made a lot, and it is a fact that white supremacy, I mean, an explicit white supremacy in the 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th, 20th century, helped shape American history. Like that is an explicit fact. It's also a fact that there's no day on which it was completely abolished. We live with its lingering legacy. That all of this is true. But then to accuse a particular person of particular racism and then back into it by saying that, well, his ancestors, it just becomes a giant mess.
Right, it starts to get into like almost a religious or like an original sin sort of thing. Yes, we erected some of the institutions of our country foundationally for racist reasons, and we should fix those. We are fixing many of them. We have some work to do, certainly, but it's not in your soul by like virtue of like that has to be exercised. And that's the problem with so much of the like Robin DiAngelo style. Here's how we fix this. You've got to read my books and do like yoga for your soul.
Right. Fixing yourself also doesn't do anything about the system.
Right.
And it does still infect the system broadly, like that you can still see its consequences. And if you just look at the outcomes, the racial wealth gap, the mass incarceration, you can still see it in the way it expresses itself through the system. But just interrogating your own privilege is not the thing that's going to get you there.
Yeah, going back to Kyle Rittenhouse for a minute, I think it would be, he can certainly fade back into anonymity, or to the extent that he can even do that if he wants to. If he is going to be a public person, which honestly he might have no choice because he's so well known, I think it's a great use of the platform he has if he advocates for due process and criminal justice, not just for people who look like him and share his views, but for everyone, and that he acknowledged that there are people who get less attention than he has, who might be poor, minority, that they would have it even worse. I think that was a great thing to say, and this is a good use of the platform that he has. But this kind of the level of stigmatizing of him that these leftist students were doing, aside from, I think, just being wrong, it would push him more into you could see how it would push him, or he would have to associate only and exclusively and more with right-wing people, right-wing causes, that would undo, or that would close off an option for doing a lot of good that is currently open to him.
Right. If you're trying to do police reform, criminal justice reform, prison reform, reform of prosecutorial misconduct, and you have somebody like Rittenhouse that you could utilize, who has all of this credibility on the right, and you can use him as a messenger to the right. If your goal is to actually accomplish your agenda, then you should be willing to do that. If your goal is just to kind of valorize yourself and share and express your own virtue, then you shouldn't associate with him. But if your goal is to actually improve people's lives, you could utilize him. And
progressives know that they elevate or have elevated or talked about the cases of people who were incarcerated for too long, or who were mistreated by the criminal justice system, but who may have had some underlying criminal activity. But they're making a point about the system, and that's like, I don't think people doesn't the left think that people can still be productive members of society, even if they had not perfect behavior at all times?
Well, the old saying is that the right looks for converts and the left looks for heretics.
Yeah.
And Joe Rogan is an interesting case of this. Like, if you listen to his show over the years, you would say that he's kind of 85, or for a long time has been like 85, 90% on the left, and then 10, 15% on the right. But Crystal has talked about this on this show, that whenever he says something that aligns with the right wing, the right elevates it and celebrates it, and the left condemns it. If he says anything that aligns with the left, supporting Bernie, Medicare for all, they either ignore it or they attack him, and the right ignores it.
Right.
And so what you receive as a kind of consumer of media is that, well, Rogan must be a right winger, because that's all you see in the media. And I think you can see it kind of pushing him tribally in that direction. So nice job.
Yeah.
You had this potential tribune, maybe you still do, to reach the people that you can't reach otherwise. And in order to satisfy your own, efforts to signal your virtue, you're blowing it.
Yeah, I think we've seen that with a lot of people on the left, actually, exactly in the Rogan mold, who sometimes agree with the right or agree with certain right-wing criticism of progressives or liberals, and then they end up becoming like stigmatized and otherized and driven into their arms.
Right.
Yeah. Well, Team Rising will join us next. Stick around for that.